The year is 2007. You sit down in the cafeteria, put your hand in your lunchbox, and pull out a sandwich. If only you had packed a Lunchable. Lunchables managed to be the coolest kids' lunch for 30 years straight. It is one of the most successful food products of all time and was recently worth almost $2 billion. Yeah, $2 billion for this. Some crackers and cheese product, in a plastic tray with a little sweet treat and sometimes a drink. This thing managed to delight both children and parents for 3 decades. Until very recently, that is. Lunchables were a smashing success. Now, they're in crisis. Is it the end of Lunchables? The once staple brand is struggling amid low sales. And you might be thinking, well, it's been 30 years. Nothing lasts forever. But the funny thing is, just 2 years ago, Lunchables were more successful than ever before. Yet now, we are very suddenly witnessing their downfall. So today we're discussing the downfall of Lunchables. Why? Because in the past year, Lunchables has been in more controversy than they had been probably in the entire 30 years prior.
Lunchables, these prepackaged meals that make lunchtime easy for families, are now raising major health concerns that parents should pay attention to.
I like my cheese drippy, bro.
You never know how harmful some snacks could be.
And the thing is, they really kind of deserved it. It was sort of like a 3 strikes you're out type situation. And it all started with Lunchables pushing to be served in school lunches. This led to an angry mob of parents. But it wasn't what killed them. It just kind of got the ball rolling. People are waking up to the fact that this is not a suitable food for a growing child's lunch.
This is pathetic. What is this? Look at that.
It seems to be the beginning of the end for Lunchables, and they did it to themselves. So if you've somehow never heard of a Lunchable before and don't quite get the concept, they're meant to be prepackaged lunches for school kids that are extremely convenient and, most importantly, fun. It all started with the crackers and cheese flavor, sort of like a child's charcuterie board. But over the years, they've spun off into tons of different versions. Pizza, which seems to be the undisputed king of Lunchables. Nachos, chicken dunks, at one point they even had little hot dog Lunchables. Breakfast Lunchables with cinnamon rolls or pancakes. Pizza and treatza, Brunchables, and the list goes on. And if you've never consumed a Lunchable before, you might be looking at this and thinking, there is no way in hell that this can possibly taste good. I mean, first of all, it's meant to be served cold or room temperature. We are talking cold chicken nuggets, questionable looking hot dogs, unmelted, dry looking pizza cheese, and just look at that bright pink meat.
It isn't good.
Looks like a chicken nugget.
But I think the general lore around Lunchables is that they do in fact taste good, but in this very distinctly fake way. And I mean that in the nicest way possible. If you've grown up with ultra-processed foods such as these, something about the fakeness of it is also kind of good. I still remember the taco ones. That meat may not have been natural, but it was pretty cool. Yes, the taco was the best. The meat was so yummy, I don't know what they put in it. Probably some crazy illegal shit that tastes amazing, lol. But even if Lunchables do taste as bad as they look, it's still pretty clear why they'd be popular with kids. Come on, a tiny hot dog? It's just fun. It's a lunch that's also a toy. I get it, I get the hype. They're hands-on, they're an activity and a ritual in a box. And of course, they also come with like a little treat. The Canadian ones come with a chocolate. I don't know what the American ones come with. And I also heard that the original box, the packaging design, was designed to look and feel like kids were opening a gift, which both kids and parents loved because it made lunch extra special. Pretty dang smart, you really do have to give it to them. The original inventors of Lunchables, Oscar Mayer, were actually pretty creatively genius for what they were at the time. It was just a processed meat company that primarily sold hot dogs, bologna, and lunch meat. And yet they created not only the Lunchable, but do you also remember their Wienermobile? And that whole song too, both of which kind of baked themselves into 90s childhoods.
Oh, I'd love to be an Oscar Mayer wiener.
The Lunchable itself was a creative solution to a big problem for Oscar Mayer. The entire story of the invention of Lunchables is told in the book Salt, Sugar, Fat by Michael Moss, and it's actually extremely interesting, so I'll give you a little summary here. In the late 80s, Oscar Mayer primarily sold bologna. And I didn't know this, but apparently at one point, bologna sandwiches were an extremely popular lunch food. Like, they were the lunch food for years. And for a long time, we're talking like from the 60s all the way up to the 90s. Your lunch options were basically either a PB&J, an egg sandwich, a tuna sandwich, or a bologna sandwich. Everyone took sandwiches for lunch, and these were by far the easiest and the most popular. So bologna sandwiches were the lifeblood of Oscar Mayer. But in the late 80s, interest in bologna began to decline because bologna is a blend of fatty cuts of chicken, beef, and pork, making it pretty high in saturated fat at a time when people were beginning to believe that fat makes you fat, which we now know to be very incorrect. But the late 80s and early 90s marked the beginning of what would become the low-fat craze. Fat was becoming synonymous with cholesterol, clogged arteries, heart attacks, and strokes, wrote Michael Moss in his 2013 book Salt, Sugar, Fat. This signaled a potential huge swing in eating habits, and no one worried about it more than Oscar Mayer.
This is Oscar Mayer's new light bologna.
So a big bologna blend of the fattiest cuts of meats around was becoming a hard sell, and sales were hurting. The team at Oscar Mayer decided they needed something fresh, and they dreamed big. They decided they wanted to reinvent lunch entirely. So they said, "F bologna sandwiches, they're boring and retro. We're gonna create the ultimate modern 90s lunch food. And it's gonna be portable, it's gonna be convenient, and it's gonna be fun." Their first designs though were basically just sad looking deconstructed sandwiches in a portable plastic tray, but they had to reinvent lunch using what they had, which was various lunch meats. The whole point was to continue selling bologna. But because no one eats bologna without bread, they still also needed the bread. But then the bread kept going soggy in the package, so light bulb moment, they decided to switch to crackers. But it just kind of looked like a big mess at first. It actually took them 20 prototypes to find the winner, what would ultimately become the Lunchable. It was a custom tray that split different varieties of meats, crackers, and cheeses into their own little slots. This new meal would take lunch and make it more portable and customizable than ever before. Now, to even call a plastic tray technology today when we're 3 steps away from living in iRobot seems weird. But this was actually a big deal. It was a leap forward in food technology, and it was extremely modern feeling for the time.
Your lunch will never be the same because Lunchables combine fresh meats and cheeses with crisp crackers.
With the design complete, the OG Crackers and Cheese Lunchable was launched in 1989 and aimed primarily at working women and busy moms. And moms were immediately into it, but not for themselves. Instead, kids love Lunchables. They were an instant hit with kids. They sold 200 million in their first year and just kept going up from there. And at first, this was really just good luck. Lunchables had done research into busy moms and their needs, but they hadn't even considered the kids until now. You can see this first commercial clearly has a lady working in an office, not a kid. But the food industry in the 90s was all about psychology, particularly child psychology. So then Lunchables starts running focus groups with little kids. They want to find out what they like, what they don't like. They wanted to know why Lunchables were so darn popular and what they could do to make them even better. First thing they discovered was that 90s kids loved 2 things: sugar and pizza. A dessert was added to the box immediately, but at first Lunchables didn't really know what to do with the pizza data. Pizza was the second most popular fast food at the time, but it typically came hot and melted out of the oven, not lukewarm out of a locker. And to most adults, an uncooked pizza is a sad excuse for a lunch. It just looks wrong. The cheese is unmelted, the sauce is cold, it's unappealing in every way. It seemed doomed to fail. Sure, kids liked pizza, but this was hardly that. But Lunchables research discovered that it wasn't really the food that excited the kids at all. It was the fun, the cool, and most of all, the feeling of power it brought to their lives. Lunchables aren't about lunch. It's about kids being able to put together what they want to eat anytime, anywhere. Bob Eckert, Lunchables CEO. So Lunchables, aka Kraft Heinz, I've been calling them Lunchables, but at this point, Oscar Mayer has been bought out by Kraft Heinz, which is one of the biggest food companies in the entire world to this day and has been for like the last 100 years. So Kraft Heinz had discovered that by allowing the kids to build their lunches themselves, what they were really doing was tapping into the human psychological need for autonomy, and the kids were going wild for it. Normal lunch was boring. Lunchables were fun and cool. Combine all that fun with a little sugary treat and a drink that kids already love, such as Capri Sun. Crank up the levels of salt, sugar, and fat in the final product and blast the TV with psychology-boosted ad campaigns, and you have yourself a big winner. All the commercials from the early 90s show kids being super sad about their normal bagged brown lunch and then being eternally grateful for their Lunchables lunch. a massive TV campaign was launched, and spin-offs of every kid's favorite fast foods were turned into Lunchables. Sales exceeded 200 million in the first 12 months and then kept climbing. Past 500 million, past 800 million, and then as of just a couple of years ago, Lunchables had become an almost $2 billion brand. And this happened not just because kids really loved them, but also because parents really loved them too. Lunchables did an amazing job marketing to parents as well as kids. Kids wanted these products so badly that if you didn't give your kid one, there was like a little rift there. Kids would beg their parents for Lunchables and literally get mad if they didn't get them. Me included, I did that. My mom would not buy me Lunchables, and I would literally think to myself, what have I done to deserve this fate? I feel like every North American person watching this right now completely understands what I mean, but I feel like other countries, other continents maybe, such as, I don't know, the Europeans, maybe still aren't getting it. I can already hear the Europeans in the comments. In my country, we would never feed our children Lunchables. This is everything wrong with America. But you guys don't understand, the hype was that real. Not buying your kid a Lunchable was like not buying them their first bike or something. There was actually a whole social dilemma around buying your kid a Lunchable. So if you did buy your kid a Lunchable, the vibe was you were being a good parent. A cool parent, a fun parent, a loving parent. You're giving your kid this fun little gift in their lunchbox, and at the same time, this product is making lunch easier for you as a parent than ever before. It was the most convenient school lunch of all time. And I feel like we're always talking about convenience on this channel, but it's a very important behavioral science principle, and it impacts your behavior a lot every single day. So I'm going to say this again so this video is at least a little bit educational. Convenient equals attractive to your brain. If something saves us just a few minutes of time, a few units of energy conserved, our brains absolutely love it. We are cognitively biased toward convenience. And that is how you get a product that succeeds for 30 years straight. The obvious issue with Lunchables, of course, is that despite all the good things, they're not exactly the most nutritious lunch for a kid. And this is what would eventually be the downfall of Lunchables, but not for the reasons you'd think. So I feel like now is the most appropriate time to address what exactly is in a Lunchable anyway. Well, I think the best answer is not much nutrition-wise. No fruits or vegetables of any kind, very little micronutrients, no fiber, not cheese, but cheese product, lots of sodium, pretty high in calories and sugar for what you get in that little package. It's maybe an okay junk food snack, but it's not really a healthy lunch for a kid. And also today we would classify a Lunchable as an ultra-processed food, which to define it, an ultra-processed food, UPF, is an industrially formulated edible substance derived from natural food or synthesized from other organic compounds. So not exactly food, but food-like. The problem with UPFs being that they're linked to a whole slew of health concerns and seem to get bad press every other day. Ultra-processed foods are kind of becoming this generation's dietary fat. We see something heavily processed with 100 ingredients on the back like a Lunchable, and we run far, far away. Like if you look at the Lunchables extra cheesy pizza, it contains pizza crust, pizza sauce, cheese, cheddar cheese, and a milk chocolate treat. Whole wheat flour, enriched flour, water, glycerol, soybean oil, monoglyceride, sugar, yeast, salt, xanthan gum, calcium propionate, calcium sulfonate, microbial enzymes, sorbic acid, pizza sauce, water, tomato paste, sugar, modified cornstarch, garlic, salt, onion, citric acid, xanthan gum, herbs, natural flavor, potassium sorbate, sodium benzoate, spices, processed cheese product, modified milk ingredients, water, sugar, modified cornstarch, bacterial culture, sodium citrate, sorbic acid, chymosin, bacterial culture, microbial enzymes, annatto, calcium chloride, natamycin. There are a ton of ingredients in a Lunchable, particularly if you compare a Lunchable with like a homemade pizza. All these extra ingredients in Lunchables are called additives. Some are preservatives and impact the shelf life, some keep things crispy, some enhance flavor. They all perform specific functions in the finished food product. And these extra ingredients, though they look scary, aren't necessarily problematic. Some of them are truly completely benign, but many of them are problematic, and ultra-processed food in general has been linked to a slew of health concerns. We're talking cancer, gastrointestinal problems, insulin resistance, gut health issues, increased food intake and obesity, ADHD, hyperactivity and behavioral issues, depression, and so on and so forth. So are Lunchables a healthy school-aged kids' lunch? I would say no. At best, they're a junky snack. The thing is though, people and parents have known that Lunchables are unhealthy from the very beginning. But times were quite different back then, and back in the day, no one really cared. Here's a Washington Post article from 1999. You call this lunch? Lunchables are everywhere, but are they good for kids? They really look awful, says Spiller, a Kensington father of two. Still, he gives them to his son Evan, 8, usually twice a week. It's for convenience. when I'm lazy, he says. This was the general sentiment even back then. Yeah, okay, Lunchables aren't the healthiest option compared to a salad, but kids aren't likely to eat salads anyway. Kids loved Lunchables, and parents saw them as a fun treat for when they needed to save time. And again, we're talking the 90s here. Sure, dietary fat is bad, but pretty much everything else gets a free pass. Colorful cereals, fish sticks, pizza pockets, Kool-Aid, mac and cheese, Gushers and Chef Boyardee, bagel bites, toaster strudels, soda and fast food were also doing quite well, particularly high in fat. No one really cared how unhealthy Lunchables were. The standards were just very different back then. In fact, Lunchables tried to make healthier versions several times and no one bought them. They experimented with adding fruits and vegetables to the package, and they worked on healthier versions, but sales were bad. Lunchables were the fun lunch, and they were successful in part because they stayed that way and didn't really worry too much about the rest. And yeah, that shtick worked for 30 years straight. I mean, think about it. Parents today are just Lunchables kids all grown up. Every time Lunchables target customer outgrew their product, they just turned into the parent of their new target customer. And thanks to nostalgia, I'm sure at least a healthy chunk of these parents have fond memories of those little room temperature pizzas and now want to let their kids in on the magic too. So in some ways, it really isn't that surprising that this product managed to stay so successful for so long. But in other ways, it definitely is kind of weird because today's parents are not the same as 90s parents. Millennials are the generation most likely to have young children right now, and one study found that they are more likely to prioritize health and wellness when making food choices than previous generations. The study found that 80% consider health benefits when selecting foods, compared to just 64% of their parents. Millennials like words like organic, artisanal, small batch, environmentally friendly, words that Lunchables are very much so the opposite of. In a study by the research firm Mintel, 43% of adults aged 21 to 38 compared to 18% of older adults said they distrusted large food manufacturers. Millennials prefer more frequent grocery shopping runs that focus on fresh foods over one big weekly trip to load up on preservative-laden products. Again, another strike for Lunchables with millennials. If you were a healthy eater in the 90s, you were called a health nut. You were kind of like different in a way. But today, it's a top priority to people and parents, and we all have more access to information than ever before. Which begs the question, so then why are millennial parents still feeding their kids Lunchables? As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, 2022 was Lunchables' most successful year ever, with them doing $2 billion in sales. And I think the answer is Lunchables were just flying under the radar. Kids want to eat all kinds of junk. And when looking at a Lunchable, a parent might be tempted to think, it's just crackers and cheese. How bad could it be? No one's been really paying attention to Lunchables. No one stopped to ask questions. They've been kind of just silently extremely successful. And so when they called a little bit too much attention to themselves, things kind of started to go off the rails.
New this morning, Lunchables will soon become a part of school lunch programs as the USDA is pushing for healthier lunches. The company says they have improved nutrition that meets federal guidelines for the National School Lunch Program.
In 2023, Kraft Heinz announced Lunchables would soon be served in cafeterias across the USA, thanks to them entering the National Student Lunch Program. Yeah, Lunchables tried to get themselves served up on student lunches across the country. And this decision would mark a clear turning point for Lunchables, but not in the direction they'd hoped. Now, this school lunch move was a very big deal. I made a video about it at the time because it really annoyed me. The American School Lunch Program provides over 4.9 billion meals annually to school children. Billion? Okay, I actually gotta check that again. There's no way that says billion. For real? 4.9 billion meals. I thought that was a typo. That's a lot. Reaching over 29 million children daily across the US, making it a cornerstone of child nutrition. That's a lot of your country's kids eating whatever you're feeding them. So if it's a sad, cold, little uncooked Lunchable, then it's a sad, cold, little uncooked Lunchable. And if you're over the age of, 7? That's not enough energy to pay attention for the day in school. It really felt like a major step in the wrong direction to have Lunchables on the school lunch program. And if you're a parent and you pack your kid a Lunchable, I believe that's different. This is not to shame parents who give their kid a Lunchable every once in a while. Presumably, you've done it with love. Presumably, you've taken into account what your child's eating the rest of the day, the rest of the week. Maybe you pack some real food to go along with it, or you know you're making them a really nutritious dinner. This school lunch thing, this is not that. Millions of American children depend on this lunch. This program was created to address malnourishment, to make sure that kids had what they needed to learn and thrive in the school environment. In the words of someone I quoted on Reddit the last time I made a video about this, is this the best we can do for the kids? You would truly be getting a better meal in jail. This is sometimes the only meal a kid will eat in a day, and you're gonna give them this? And the most annoying part of the whole thing was that obviously this entire thing was just happening so that Kraft Heinz could make a quick buck off these kids. Do we think they care about kids getting an inferior school lunch? Do we think they care about kids having a nutritious lunch? Let's be real, all they care about is making a little bit more money. Or hey, maybe a lot more money. In the words of the Wall Street Journal, Kraft Heinz sees a $25 billion opportunity in schools. One of the world's biggest food companies has a new idea for winning customers: feed them lunch in schools. I feel like the person who wrote that article wasn't vibing with it either. And if that sentiment already leaves a bad taste in your mouth, listen to what the CEO had to say about it. The kids have Lunchables and then they go to retail and they see it, Abrams Rivera said. It's a penetration machine. I don't know, it kind of makes me uncomfortable to know that they want to use America's school children in their penetration machine. It also makes it sound like they are literally grooming them to be their future customers. Oh wait, that is exactly what they're doing. And so it was around this time that conversations and outrage started to pop up surrounding Lunchables for the first time in like 30 years. People felt like the schools were selling out their kids to big corporations. While it's brilliant marketing on the part of Kraft, we've sold out our kids for Kraft to build market share this way, Barbara Whitaker, a mother from Washington State, wrote in a letter submitted to the USDA. And one of the major red flags in this situation was that Lunchables had to actually reformulate their regular meals in order to be healthy enough to qualify for the student lunch program. Don't worry, parents, these aren't the crap we sell in grocery stores.
2 new varieties will be in school cafeterias.
Well, Lunchables will become part of some school lunch programs this fall.
Those are going to be different from the ones you get at the grocery store.
These will not be the same as what you find in the grocery store.
These are different than those found in grocery stores. The company says they have improved nutrition that meets federal guidelines.
It kind of begs the question to the general public, okay, well, why does this thing need to be reformulated in order to be sold in schools? And the Lunchables really didn't end up changing that much. It was kind of just like some things like the sodium, the protein, things like that switched around. So it really does make you wonder, okay, well, why didn't you guys just do that in the first place? So I feel like if you're a parent at this point, you might be feeling a little bit ripped off. Like everyone already knew that Lunchables weren't the healthiest thing in the world, but now we knew that they weren't even really trying to be real food. So I think this whole penetration into schools thing and the surrounding controversy had parents for the first time in a long time really reevaluating whether or not a Lunchable actually deserved to be in their kids' lunch. So that was strike one for Lunchables. But though this forceful push into schools did really annoy some people, it didn't quite change the public opinion on Lunchables. I mean, after all, the school lunch program is quite flawed to begin with. It quite literally allows Lunchables to qualify based on the fact that the pizza sauce qualifies as a red-orange vegetable, which is also part of the same criteria that allows a Domino's Pizza Smart Slice to make it onto the menu. But this move did annoy one group enough to put them in their sights, which would lead just a few months later to strike two.
Lunchables, these prepackaged meals that make lunchtime easy for families, are now raising major health concerns that parents should pay attention to.
Lunchables tested positive for lead,
and sodium.
Lead.
Concerning levels of lead, cadmium, or both.
Consumer Reports did a study that found lead and cadmium in the meals.
The idea of eating lead for lunch didn't sit well with any of these kids.
No amount of lead is safe for children.
The heavy metals can cause developmental issues, even in the smallest of doses. Stop serving children Lunchables.
Should not be part of school lunch.
Not a healthy option for kids.
I liked them a lot, but now I don't want to eat them anymore.
Now thousands have joined a petition about having snack kits removed from school lunch programs.
Lunchables tested positive for lead,
and sodium.
Lead.
You never know how harmful some snacks could be.
Lunchables' cocky move into school lunches caught the eye of the nonprofit watchdog group Consumer Reports. In April 2024, Consumer Reports tested Lunchables and 12 of their competitors, and their tests revealed disturbing quantities of sodium, lead, and even cadmium. When I saw this headline originally, I was actually speechless. Like, how the hell did you guys manage to allow lead and cadmium into a children's lunch product? Like, not one person did some sort of quality check to make sure that food made specifically for children was safe to eat. Lead is a toxin like no other. People think about, oh yeah, lead's bad, mercury's bad, cadmium's bad, air pollution is bad, all these things. No, lead is really disproportionately bad. Lead is linked to a wide range of neurological and development problems, and exposure is especially dangerous for children. Research has found kids with elevated levels of lead in their blood experience a range of effects, from speech and hearing problems to learning and behavioral issues. They develop more slowly, physically and mentally. Damn, Lunchables, not a good look. The amount of lead in their products too was far more than any of their competitors. Before we go any further, to be fair to Lunchables, from what I understand, finding some degree of lead in food products is actually quite common. Consumer Reports also found lots of chocolate brands contaminated with lead, cinnamon, spice brands, which is still bad for sure, but I guess lead and cadmium are common contaminants in soil and can sometimes leach into the final product that way if the proper precautions aren't taken. In Lunchables' case though, we don't really have much of this package coming from soil of any kind, so all the lead in here is more likely from a smattering of different sources. The lead could have come from the meat, the processing equipment, the plastic packaging, the water used, or any number of contaminated ingredients. And you might be thinking, oh, well, that means it's basically normal or fine then. Most of their competitors selling nearly the identical product had nowhere near the same amounts of lead. P3 had only 7%, and Oscar Mayer's own other product only had 21%. So what does that tell you? It tells you that Kraft Heinz either 1, didn't do any quality assurance testing for known contaminants like lead, or 2, they did do those tests but then didn't care about the outcome. What this makes me think is that this product is using the cheapest possible ingredients with the least amount of quality checks conducted and the least amount of care or concern given to the creation of this food. They were making a product for children, okay? One of the biggest food companies in the entire world. They know things like lead happen, and yet they did nothing to prevent this from happening. And you can't say, oh yeah, maybe they just didn't know, but the more likely scenario is truly that they just did not care. Instead of made with love, Lunchables were made with lead. Oh yeah, and cadmium, way too much sodium, sugar, and even phthalates. Consumer Reports also found a concerning amount of phthalates in the packaging, chemicals found in plastic that have been linked to reproductive problems, diabetes, and certain cancers. In the end, Consumer Reports stated that, bottom line, we don't think anybody should regularly eat these products, and they definitely shouldn't be considered a healthy school lunch. And this nonprofit felt so strongly about this that they ended up petitioning the USDA to get Lunchables removed from the lunch program, resulting in another round of angry parents, commenters, and general controversy. Strike 2 and the second back-to-back stain on the Lunchables brand. And then finally, to top off the very rough year that Lunchables had, in September 2024, along came Lunchly.
Congratulations on the launch of this product that has just really angered a lot of people.
So many people. I like my cheese drippy, bro. Drippy, bro. Drippy, bro.
YouTubers Mr. Beast, Logan Paul, and KSI came together to create a Lunchables knockoff. No, seriously, it's an exact knockoff of Lunchables' most popular 3 flavors: turkey, pizza, and nachos. The only real difference between these 2 products was that Lunchly promised to be a healthier alternative to Lunchables.
Lunchly versus Lunchables. Ooh. We're also 30 less calories, 3 less grams of fat, and 8 less grams of sugar. If you look at this close up, you can already tell which one has better ingredients. All right, we'll start off with the Lunchables.
Bro, I'm sorry, that's trash. All right, now we're trying Lunchly. Come on. We're not biased at all, but ours is way better.
In fact, Lunchly's marketing basically revolved entirely around slamming Lunchables for being unhealthy in favor of their supposedly healthier product, which obviously didn't impact Lunchables' reputation. I don't think parents take their nutrition information from scammy 25-year-old YouTubers. But the real problem here was all the hate Lunchly got. People were rightly annoyed that the creators of Lunchly were trying to take advantage of their young fans by selling them junk food. Yeah, I definitely feel like another line has been crossed here. I don't really think it's that big of a deal when Mr. Beast sells like chocolate bars to his kid fans. Kids eat chocolate, it's a treat. Kids eat treats, no harm, no foul in my opinion. However, when you try to sell a food that's meant to replace a whole meal to your young fans and try to bill it as healthier, people start paying attention. They start scrutinizing. They start asking if your claims line up with the truth. And this healthier than Lunchables claim caused people to take the time to directly compare Lunchly's nutrition information to Lunchables. The outcome?
I'm gonna ask you guys, which one would you rather eat? Which one would you give your kid? Both are a highly processed food snack.
And I usually don't make videos discussing creators' products, but when terms like healthier or better for you get tossed around, I feel it's important to set the record straight. While these kits are fun and tasty, their nutritional value is just not good.
People pretty much came to the unanimous conclusion that both these products are crap and you probably shouldn't feed them to your kids often, if at all. Lunchly also suffered a mold scandal just a few weeks after their launch, which kind of brings back up Lunchables and their lead problem to your mind. And all in all, if you're a parent, I feel like it would just kind of leave a bad taste in your mouth in general for products like these. Clearly, the makers of children's food products don't really have the health and wellness of your child in mind. So to me, Lunchly was strike 3 for Lunchables. In just 12 months' time, Lunchables went from almost 0 major issues to 3 hugely controversial moments. Moments that seem to have seriously harmed the Lunchables brand in a way that might actually change them forever. Lunchables were a smashing success. Now they're in crisis. By November 2024, Lunchables had to be pulled from the school lunch program. That $25 billion opportunity they predicted, the penetration machine, it backfired big time, and it somehow turned into a 12% drop in sales instead. The company actually had to report a $1.4 billion non-cash impairment charge that year. I'm not going to pretend that I know what that means, but it sounds bad, and the rest of the article says that it's Lunchables' fault. And according to the CEO himself, it's all due to parents not trusting the Lunchables brand. This is a brand that is focused on families and kids, so rebuilding that trust just takes some time. Yeah, when you try to penetrate schools with a product full of lead, you really did kind of bring this on yourself. And all this at a time when we're already really kind of starting to fall out of love with ultra-processed foods anyway. I mean, if you really think about it, what is the point of a Lunchable style meal kit in 2025? When it came out, the plastic tray that separated the ingredients was like a marvel of technology. Now any parent can go on Amazon, buy their own tray, put crackers, cheese, and dare I say a fruit or vegetable in it, and of course package the whole thing with love instead of lead. Or cadmium, sodium, sugar, phthalates, mold. A Lunchable just doesn't really make as much sense as a product anymore. Ultra-processed treats were like trendy and fun in the 90s. You were a cool parent if you gave your kid a Lunchable. But today we have higher nutritional standards and more access to information. We're also becoming sick of companies making us sick. And if you think about it, the conditions today are really, really similar to the conditions that originally killed bologna for Oscar Mayer, leading to the invention of Lunchables to begin with. Ultra-processed foods are kind of the new dietary fad. Demonized, undesirable, and something that most people want to avoid. Lunchables, once a symbol of convenience and fun, are becoming associated with the very thing parents want to steer clear of, unhealthy, overprocessed junk. So it seems the 30-year reign of Lunchables is about to come to an end. And it looks like Kraft Heinz knows it too. Lunchables is in the midst of a transformation, said Frost from Kraft Heinz. We're working on an exciting innovation that we will unveil in the months ahead. The company is studying all parts of the offering, from product design, price, to marketing, and conducting research to understand consumers' preferences, she said. In other words, sounds like Kraft Heinz is planning to reinvent lunch again, like they did when they first brought out the Lunchables. So is this really and truly the end of Lunchables? I guess we'll see. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.